Jai Hind, Jai Bharat, and welcome to Dev Talks. This is Aadi. Big diplomatic events lined up for India in the next some time. Modi Sahib is going to the US. A lot of people are speculating big changes between the relations of both these countries. What is going to happen? How is this relationship going to go forward? And there are multiple factors that we need to see while this relationship is going forward. One of the biggest factors that we need to look at is our friend China. How will China react? And if you guys remember, I had done a show where I had actually put out my understanding of the China relationship is that every time you have gone close to the US, the Chinese have a big problem and a big digestive problem, if I may. So discuss this and dig a little deeper into this. I have with me Lieutenant General Dushyant Singh. Sir, good afternoon. Welcome to the show.
Good afternoon, Adi. Thanks. Good to be back again. Yeah,
So, sir, as I was saying, it's going to be, we need to send some Digene to China. They're going to be having a lot of digestive issues in the next week, especially. Uh, the main thing that I want to highlight through this show is that the Chinese look at India today as a de facto ally of the US. You may not be so, but they do look at it like that. As far as the agreements are concerned, we have signed two out of the four agreements which are required to be signed when any country becomes an ally of the US, a military ally. So we are two out of four already. And there are loads of other hidden little agreements that we would not even know about, which are underway
that's
that
right.
probably the Chinese have some hints. So, sir,
Correct.
opening comments. What do you think is going to happen? How do you think the Chinese are going to take it? What else are the factors? Which else are the factors that we need to look at? Of course, I believe there's going to be Pakistan, who's crying foul right now. There's going to be Russia, which is consequential. But let's take the US trip forward and let's hear your comments, sir.
Uh, Adi, the US-India relations are actually, the turning point came a long time back. But slowly we have been moving towards the US willy-nilly due to various events which have taken place across the globe. But I would say there has been a defining moment with the COVID-19. I think COVID-19 was the event which actually uh, made the whole relationship go in a totally different direction, more towards the US and less towards the East. Somewhere, and the Galwan incident which took place, during that period by the Chinese, more or less sealed the fact that the relation between India and China definitely were not going to be hunky dory as it was maybe a few years back. And then you saw series of action which we took, kind of banning the various software apps, etc., which were Chinese origin. Then controlling our trade with China. Whole lot of other things were introduced, which gave a very clear signal at the international level that definitely India and China are not today what they were a few years back. All our interactions went for a tizzy, in fact, after that. So these two events actually moved us more towards the US. And then you had the Ukraine war. I think the Ukraine war, in some way or the other, gave some kind of, I would say, a break to the Indo-US ties, because here we had our ally getting involved. No, I won't say ally, but a very long friend of India,
Partner.
Russia getting involved into the whole geopolitical game which was happening. So these three, four events, the COVID, the Russia-Ukraine war, and the series of interactions not so healthy between India and China on the border, kind of gave us a new emerging world order. What it is today, the new emerging world order today to me looks like divided between continental powers and the sea going powers.
Definitely.
U.S.,
Yes, sir.
most of the Western world, which is along the sea, so-called Chinese Sea Silk route, and then you have the continental part, which is Russia, Iran, China. Take that belt up to the Europe. So between these two parts, India is now struck between these two big alignments, because India has both. The silk route, sea silk route, is also available to India through the Indian Ocean, Arabian Sea, and you have the Bay of Bengal, Malacca Strait. So we are kind of controlling the sea trade route for quite a bit of its expanse. And the second thing is that India does have an access to the Central Asian landmass. However, of late that has been cut off, basically because of the Pakistan coming in between, and Afghanistan. So that's a different story which we have discussed. Somewhere India is forced to now depend wholly on the sea route. So I say that Mahan has become India's new favorite friend. We have no choice but to align with the forces which promote rules based world order, especially along the sea routes and sea lanes of communication. In fact, there are many experts who are saying that we are fully into the US camp. And whatever we are saying or whatever we are not saying, that we are still having a strategic autonomy, maybe just a just a dialogue, or just a statement which is being made, khana purti, as I would say. More or less people are assuming that India is now in the US camp. I
No,
don't
that is
think
very
so.
that is very
Yeah,
interesting, sir. May I, if you don't mind, very interesting because it's I think it's like a camping of convenience, if I may. And
absolutely.
the world is kind of jerked up, but it's now being seen multiple places. This
Absolutely
camping
it
of
is.
convenience is being seen all over the, Africa is edging here, the Middle East is edging in a certain way. So it's become a
Absolutely,
camping of convenience. जब तक oil shoil है तो रशिया से बात करो, डिफेंस का है तो रशिया से कर लो, जियोपॉलिटिक्स है तो यूके यूएस से कर लो.
absolutely, absolutely. I think it is looking more at interests first and values later.
Hmm, hmm.
The tweet, in fact, I just retweeted with a kind of a uh, saying to that. I mean, there was a guy, I'm forgetting, it's Paul Bracey or somebody, who
Foreign
was
affairs
tweeted that.
article.
Yeah, so who was tweeted that in Russia, US, while interacting with India, should base its interaction by shared interests and not shared values. So I picked up this line from that particular tweet, and I had retweeted on that and saying that, no, look, anti-India and love China toolkit has already started even before Prime Minister Modi has put his step on the American soil. So therefore, I think these kind of toolkits will continue now. They'll become much more intense, trying to separate this new evolving strategic partnership. It is already we are already a strategic partner, but taking it to the level where I think securitization may become the next level of Indo-US relation. That is something which I am now expecting from this particular visit, and that will be actually a very very counterproductive development as far as China is concerned. Whatever the Chinese may be telling as far as India's capability vis-a-vis China are concerned, they must not forget everything is not by capability. There is something called will to use power. There is something called the operational experience. There is something called bloodied army. I think bloodied defense forces, and I think the Indian defense forces are far more operationally experienced, and more importantly, remember, it is going to be the Himalayas where you're going to fight. It is not 1962, it is something else. The Chinese are living in a bubble, so to say, of imagined technological superiority. But then everything is not technology, as you can see in Ukraine. And also, don't forget, we are not Ukraine. We have the capability to have a kind of a swing platform operational capability. We are
Hmm.
not entirely eastern driven, and we are also not entirely western driven. So if
Western
we
driven.
get any kind of equipment, we have an internal expertise to actually use them and operate them, whether it is
And develop them.
and develop them, whether it is land-based system or whether it is aerial systems. I think both ways we
Yeah,
are far more capable, much more capable than the Chinese. In fact, we can fly the Rafales and the Su-30s together. Nobody should forget that. We can
And the
fly the
MiG-21s
Jaguar.
also साथ में.
And
60s
we can,
technologies
yes,
to even today.
yes,
Yeah, that's
we
important,
can
sir.
fly, we can fly the Jaguars and Mirages along with the MiG-21. I would want to say that, or the MiG-27s as we have. So we have definitely a far more versatile defense forces as compared to us, and this is something very unique. You won't find
Yeah,
anywhere
yeah.
else. This kind of capability is not there with anyone, not even the Russian, not even the Chinese.
Adaptability. Mm.
That's the point I'm trying to make. The Chinese are living slightly in this so-called make-believe supremacy, that they are very good in the economics, so therefore, and the technological capability, so therefore they can browbeat India. I don't think they can. I have few slides, which we can go through quickly, so that the audience is able to understand as to why, what we are talking about, and what is the likely implications of the Indo-US relations, more in terms of the big picture rather than the minor issues. See, the questions which people are asking, are we now fully in the camp of the US? This is a big question now being asked by a lot of experts, and many of them are now writing that we are actually fully into that camp. I would say we are currently, the picture which you see in the right corner where Modi is on a single cycle trying to go over the rope. I think we are somewhere there, and we are trying to negotiate very very carefully through this sea-based Alfred Mahan alignment and the Mackinder's the continental alignment. Somewhere in
Mm.
between, we are trying to adjust and readjust to our shared interests with various countries. Like you said, geopolitics of convenience is what is going on as far as India is concerned. Can we afford such a status at this stage? Uh, my argument will be coming forth later on that maybe not, maybe not. We still have to go further before we can take very very clear cut positions on issues,
Yeah.
or whether we should take some positions on it. How should
Certain
India manage?
positions. Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah, I mean, see, where you're not going to ruffle the Russian feathers, it's okay. I'm talking of NATO plus, etc. There are issues, where we really can't be seen as going full throttle on the Western camp. How should India
Hmm.
manage Russia in our eagerness to manage China? Is the big question which we have to be careful of. And the mantra which I feel India has is in the second cartoon, where India is, Modi has been shown as sitting on the carpet and with his yogic mudra in front. Look, partners, let's give peace a chance. I think somewhere we will continue to buy time for peace. That's the way I look at it, and that will give us that time which we require to be fully comfortable. You remember about the our external affairs minister had said when they were talking about our statements vis-a-vis China were concerned. He
Yeah.
says our statements are based on the core of
Cool.
our capabilities, core of our capabilities. So we are assessing our capabilities and then giving our statements. We are very clear. And this is typically a Chanakya Niti. If you go back to 2,300 years
Yeah.
back, this is what Chanakya had said. Be
जितनी चादर हो
be
उतने ही पैर फैलाने चाहिए.
bilkul bilkul. So that is where I think we are showing some realism in our external
Yeah.
affairs policy. If you go to the
No,
next
that
one,
is. May I, sir, because I really feel that what you've brought out is very very critical. That it's a realistic policy.
yeah, it's not bombastic, it's not rhetoric.
Yes, sir.
It's not rhetoric. I think he's giving India a clear direction. Of course, today, in fact, there was a statement even by one of the most anti-Modi journalists of our country, is saying that India today is defined by, in external affairs policy, by Modi, ably supported by his external affairs minister. I won't name him, but this is something. It comes out as a statement which he must have taken, very heavy heart to write before he did before he did this. But that's the power which Modi now enjoys today, purely based on his approach. I think that is where people are mistaking India to be rhetoric. He's not rhetoric. I think he's going with a lot of caution, and we it is good for us that we have a minister who is technically. qualified to steer India through this kind of situation what we are. So stronger defense ties is something which we are looking at. What is this agreement going to bring to us on the table? Index X, most of the people have spoken about, but you should carefully note what is written in this. It is private to private, right? Which means the best of the brains of India and the best of the brains of the US will get involved in innovations. That means grassroots development. And here I am
Research.
referring to something like the Brahmos coming,
Yeah.
the Muskova River and the Brahmaputra joining together. I see a similar kind of venture development taking place between India and America, and that too it will be in the capabilities which are niche, which are possibly going to be the
Next level.
uh, next level technology.
Mm.
And
Mm.
I have various theories for it. Till the time he goes there and announces what exactly is going to be the joint area of development, beside the G engine, which everybody knows, and the Predator deal, which we are talking about, the MQ-9, also the artillery gun, which we are looking at. So there are a number of other issues, but I'm looking at through Index X something beyond that, something which is going to be path breaking as far as our. It could be in the space, it could be in the digital digital era or digital domain. So it could be any of these two, but it will be something path breaking, and I think we should wait for that. And more importantly, I also see a license being given to India for exporting these. India will not agree that offset business was bunkum. Nobody will give you, transfer of technology purely on offsets, etc. Nobody gives you.
Yeah.
It has to be a diplomatic coup. It has to be a diplomatic coup, diplomatic heft, which will give you permission for you to actually go in for exporting. We can produce Su-30s in our country, but can we export it?
No.
That's the problem. We can't. So therefore, I look at China, America giving us that additional. If that
Hmm.
additional thing comes, today our exports are lying at. I mean, it's a great achievement. 2016 तक हमारे तो export होते ही नहीं थे. But
Yeah. Yeah.
as of today, it is defense exports have gone to dollar 1.92 billion, and it is projected that by 2025 our exports would be going up to about 5 billion. To reach that 5 billion target, I think this agreement of exports of our defense equipment is something which we will have to keep looking for, and this is one of the major things which is likely to happen. Also, I find that the Americans are in need of a power which can actually uh, balance China, which can actually have the capability to have detent with China. And in this part of the world, I think there is no other power bigger than India to do so. But India has been hesitant for its own reasons, as we all are aware of why we are not wholeheartedly going towards this. It is to achieve this that the US may actually go in for giving us that extra bit. Also, the US economy is in a very bad shape.
Mm.
You see, it was suffering a debt crisis. Somehow it has got over that. Then you also look at its financial system. Big banks have failed in America. These are inflation has been very very high. They are in need of a injection of economic. So as it is important for India to have these technologies, it is even more important for America to somehow have its economy revived. So therefore, it is a mutual give and take which is happening,
So they
values
need
aside.
investments. They need that churn
Yes,
to happen. So that
absolutely.
interesting. Mm.
So therefore, I think and they know which is the country which can buy it. But
पैसा कहाँ है?
but there is the problem. India has a historical baggage with America. The trust levels at various occasions India has been dished, whether it was Kargil, whether it was in the 1962 war. We do not want to be left stranded in thin air. So therefore our trusts have to be restored. How they do it, it is by giving these additional features which we are talking about. Maybe India might just tilt the balance toward the US. But second thing which we worries us is that US also, remember I had discussed about the how Pakistan was created by the West to actually
Yeah.
have a say in this region. So America at the same time would not want Pakistan to get concerned by whatever they are doing to India. And you mentioned that. I think there'll be some guarantees taken by them also, that not to ruffle the feathers of Pakistan and let Pakistan melt in its own quagmire, or melt in its own froth. Whatever they are doing, let them be what they are, and not interfere or not inflame that situation through means which every nation has to do. I mean, which it can do or which it can undertake. So therefore, I think there may be some amount of concerns there as far as the Americans are concerned. I had also already spoken about the dependence on Russia still remains about 45. It was around 60%,
Yeah.
But luckily, last year's figures show that this is CIPRI figures. I'm not talking of any figures quoted from our own pocket. It is CIPRI figures says 45% has been the dependence on Russia, and thereafter 29% by France. And I think this would be more because of the Rafales which we bought from France. But China, my mistake, not China, the US is with 11% a distant third. That is a small mistake. It's not China which is third. It is US with 11% of imports at the third place as far as India US ties are concerned. China may get tempted to use force against India. If we go too whole hog, there is also a chance that we may get involved into some kind of a crisis. It may not be a full-fledged war, but something maybe beyond Galwan and less than a Kargil is something like that happens, because China still feels possibly that India is a low-hanging fruit, and that's my view. Number of people don't agree to it, but like I said, India is always shown that image of being a soft power. It has always projected itself. Even the cartoon which I showed you, we were trying to win over people by our soft power than the hard power. Somewhere we fight, but we fight when everything else fails. Whereas a superpower normally you is very
Fights first
willing and
and then.
ready. Yeah, or it's very willing to use the military
Yeah.
power
Yeah. Yeah.
whenever required. Then it has been taken out of the one more development which has taken place, where the Chinese may get upset and maha upset with India, is that China has now been taken out of the developing country list. Now, this is something very, very hurting to China. Its economy is going to get hurt very badly. I'll
Badly.
tell you why. Its per capita income is now $12,500 per person. So this is now the figure which is given as the middle income countries.
Yeah.
But from here to develop to a developed country, progress to developed countries, you require to have a sustained growth of at least next 30 years, 20 to 30 years, of a rate beyond 2.5%. 2.5%, it will take that much more longer, but it has to be beyond 2.5%. The projections of China are that it is going to be around 3%, is the projections. What may actually happen, because of the various fundamentals of the Chinese economy, it may not be able to touch that also. Why? It is because of this factor. They will stop getting the aids which they were getting in terms of climate change, whether it is environment protection, NGT, whole lot of issues now. They will not get that preferential treatment, and therefore they will have to spend more. Their labor cost has increased. What was their
16%
prime
over three
strength?
years.
What was their prime strength was the labor cost. That has disappeared. The labor cost has become as high as any developed country, obviously because of the demographics which you and me, everybody is aware of, single child policy, etc. That is why the Global Times now carried a list of saying old people in India are dying of heat wave here. This has always happened in India. It's a very common thing. But our our youth dividend still remains 67%, which is very huge. I don't think the Chinese are trying desperately to project this fear into the Indian diaspora or in Indian population that look, you guys are not going the right way. Anyway, so how is China looking at this development? These are the three statements which I'll like everyone to read through, and you will get the sense of what the, the first one is from the PLA senior colonel in the Shangri-La dialogue. He said, India will not pose a security threat to China because it is still capable of challenging Beijing in defense manufacturing and modernizing of its military. Look at it. At no place they are talking about will to use force, will to use power. They've just compared it simply from defense
Capability.
manufacturing and modernization. I don't think these are the battle winning factors
Yeah.
alone. Battle winning factors are many more, which these two guys have kept quiet about. Then you look at Austin's speech, and this is where they are getting rattled, and therefore the defense minister of China came up with that statement, and possibly earned a little more Chinese brownie point from Xi Jinping, but overall, the the Chinese were projected as a country in jitters. See, Austin says, uh, strengthening of the U.S. Indo-Pacific deterrence called integrated deterrence. They are trying to take the Mahan powers on board, powers which were followers of, which have that linkage with the sea on board by buttressing the capability of its military allies, Japan, Australia, South Korea, Thailand, Philippines. Going on to say partners, Indonesia, Singapore, Vietnam, and India. You're talking of those levels. And lastly, he chodo the bomb, NATO plus nations.
That is like a fire.
Yeah, that's for Australia essentially, that's what they meant by Australia is a NATO plus. I mean, willy nilly it will be a NATO plus country. So therefore, what was the response of Defense Minister Li Zhangfu? He refused to meet Austin. It is kind of showing, hey guy, you are no more the boss. The Chinese have arrived, and they are the superpowers now of the world. They are trying to take the world toward the bipolar paradigm,
Yeah.
and I think India is trying to take the world along with the others of its kind toward the multipolar world. For us, a multipolar world is easier to balance out than a bipolar world. We had our experiences of the Cold War, and we don't want to go through that kind of a. We were virtually in the camp of Russia. I mean, Russia, whatever people may say. Okay, so what did he say? Some countries of intensifying an arms race and interfering in the internal affairs of the others. To Taiwan, he says people should be very clear that it's an internal matter of China. I think there is battle lines being drawn. At the same time, they are trying to give some space for the two sides to come up with some working relationship, and that is why you had that another visit which is taking place in China of the foreign
Lincoln.
ministers. Yeah, but and before that, probing visits by various billionaires of America, which have taken place. I think which you discussed with Guru also. But they're trying to
Yes.
project those visits as a positive. The Chinese are trying to say, hey, the American billionaires are looking at how to get things done in China, and then not the other way around, that they want to upstick. The reality is that these guys have been directed to withdraw from
Check the
China, and
temperature.
yeah, absolutely. And if things don't go well, they withdraw, or they will function at the terms and conditions of the US and not at the terms and conditions of China. Let's see
China.
how that story develops. That's a different. How will the Russians react? This is more important for us to actually understand. Will help us to diversify our defense procurement. As far as we are concerned, I think our reduction of dependence will further go down. From 45%, I look at it going to around 30-35%, which will be a good sign. We will have a broad three-way distribution of our defense imports.
And plus
And also,
internal production.
also
Yeah.
indigenization may take a faster route. Then you have the will enable putting pressure on Russia not to upset the rupee ruble trade. We can go back to the Russians and say, look, partner, we have options. If you do
Hmm.
not accept a rupee ruble trade, because this is in order to put India down, they signed few agreements with Pakistan immediately following this particular news item which came out that Russia is not very keen on a rupee ruble trade. So therefore I think it'll act as some kind of a counter or a pressure to the Russians also, so that way it'll help India. Then you have China and Russia may gang up to strengthen Pakistan, right? This is something which we have to be careful of, and I think we'll have to somehow manage especially the Russians. I have a feeling that in desperation this could come about. After all, everybody is looking for their personal interests, something which we need to be careful about. In case if this happens, then Pakistan becomes the proxy, which they're quite used to being molested from everyone, so they can become a proxy if they want to. But then it will create some problems. It will hinder our economic progress, which is slated at 7.5, sustained for over 10 to 11 years, which will definitely give India an edge, which is far more. In fact, many of them have projected that we are likely to reach that third spot very soon, sooner than what
Yeah.
has been projected by
3.75
the
to ho gaya, sir.
yeah, that's what I'm saying. So we are likely to be reaching that landmark much faster. Of course, the real landmark would be when we get our per capita to around 12,500 to $13,000. That should be our real aim, and not the GDP alone. GDP alone gives you a combined power, but the individual power comes from your per capita income. That should be the ideal aim. uh, then Russia may tighten the oil and gas export. Here, I feel that the Saudi Arabian Chinese link may hurt India. So therefore, we need to develop some alternate options before we go ahead
Iran,
with any kind of.
Iran is already under work. Yes, sir.
Yes, that's right. Hold back spares of critical equipment such as Sukhoi aircrafts and tanks, because they do comprise of a major fleet of ours. So and they may take the cover of Ukraine war, like since because of the Ukraine war, we are unable to give you A, B, C, D as far as your the repairs MROs are concerned. But it is a possibility, and therefore we have to be careful of that also. Influence Iran to reduce Indian access to oil and also Chabahar port and other resources. Remember, our linkage to the Eurasian mass, which is considered as one of the hubs of natural resources, is restricted today, thanks to the Western powers in 1947, what they did to India through the Pakistani creation of Pakistan, forced the Saudi Arabians to adopt an anti-India approach. This is something which may take place. Turkey may become the spoil spot here. Turkey is now becoming something like a power which is spoiling
Game
the
for
broth
everyone.
of spoiling the broth of NATO also, and spoiling the broth of the Islamic countries, as well as spoiling the broth of the Indian
Brussels
position.
also.
Yeah, on Brussels, yeah, EU also. So therefore, I think Turkey needs to be viewed from a very very close perspective as to how they are going to influence or affect our relationship with the other countries. Overall analysis, it may be difficult to completely decouple from Russia, and neither it would be advisable at this particular stage. Is my take on this
I
particular
mean, the
Indo-US.
Russians won't also want that to happen because they also look at India as a very sane power. Ki bhai, we are with India, so we are also one of the saner powers of the world. We're not insane.
Absolutely. And I will quote here two, three examples. You take any voting of the world, whether it was COVID, whether it was for the against China on the ordering of an inquiry as to the origin of the virus. It was what? It was overwhelmingly in favor of the pro-democratic, or so-called the Mahan powers that be. 180 or something was the vote. In the Russia-Ukraine war, agreed India remained neutral. But what was the difference? 33 countries were neutral, 4, 5 countries, which were insignificant countries, North
Yeah.
Korea, etc., were supporting Russia. And so even China was neutral. Look at the the, the divide which is there. The bulk of the world still remains towards the rule-based economy, rule-based world order. Whether people follow it or not, that's a different matter. But when it comes to critical times, critical issues, I think the world opinion does matter. And therefore, That is something why the Russians would also not like to be, and that is the reason why the Russians are not going whole hog as far as Ukraine is concerned.
They're also
They're not
dealing with the
using.
African Union, which is a big chunk of, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So therefore, overall analysis, in my view, the situation will be a step higher, maybe leading to a very very high value joint development project and permission to export in areas where we carry out joint production. That is something, in my view, would be the overall outcome. Also, some rhetorical statements will definitely come out. That is something which maybe may- maybe there'll be a kind of a different coining of a word for our next level friendship. We are now strategic partners. It could be something. I'm still trying to. I think
Yeah.
yesterday, when informally I was trying to discuss with you or someone, I came up with a word, but I'm not able to recollect what it was. So, the geopolitical map on the horizon is what you're going to see. Russia, China, Central Asian countries, selective Europe nations, North Korea. This is something which is a kind of an alignment you will see. US, UK, EU, India, ME. I'm putting India as of now part of this because of the overall voting pattern and the overall way India takes sides as far as global issues are concerned. We are definitely with the pro democracy or pro liberal or rule based world order countries, etc. ME, Southeast Asian countries, Taiwan, Australia, Japan, South Korea. This is essentially the sea-based powers which are there along the sea routes, and India is struck between the reality, values, and historical issues. So we are struck between reality, our value systems, and historical baggage. Note each word. We are struck between reality. What is the reality? Reality is that more than half of the world is on one side. The reality is India has some value systems which it follows while undertaking relations with various countries at the global level. And reality is that we have had some historical baggages which we just can't forget. And people say that if you do not learn from history, you are bound to repeat it. So these three factors are a cautionary elements as far as India's relation with the whether it's the US or any other country, even Russia. We have to be very careful on these counts. I have finished, but this is how what I see the current Indo-US relations going ahead. A improvement to a level next, but not entirely in the camp of the US, as many, in fact, my friends are writing also that India is possibly in the US camp now fully. I don't agree with it.
Hmm.
So we can now remove my presentation. I have finished.
One or two
Yeah,
questions up before we head into the audience questions. And guys, start firing up. There are loads of questions which are already here, loads of comments.
yeah,
190 plus people watching us.
good.
Sir, main thing I want to ask you is about, see, the strategic balance that India is trying to maintain is a, if I, in my opinion, it's a high risk, high payout sort of a game,
Yeah,
right? You get this right, you're gonna have a lot of the world that is sick of both the sides stand behind you,
correct.
and which is something honestly I see emerging, right? With the
Yeah,
African Union getting a voice, with the Middle East kind of doing what it wants to, with Southern American countries getting a voice and speaking out. I mean, the African Union, what it said right now when they met Putin and Zelensky was very clear. They were very hard on their stance, and that is
yeah.
what India has been. So there's that also thing which is emerging. I'm at no point of time I'm saying that we are the leader of that. No, but I think we sure have put a voice to that.
Yeah, if we have some, I think on your channel there are people who like to hear in Hindi also, so I can take this question as kind of a Hindi English mix for reasons
हाँ
for
no
reasons
problem,
that
sir.
let others also. Last time when I was talking, people said Hindi में कोई बात नहीं कर रहा है, so I thought let me
नहीं नहीं मिक्स सर, मिक्स चलेगा.
तो नो, देखिए, इसके ऊपर जो है ना, पहले से ही कुछ सुगबुगाहट शुरू हो गई है। देयर इज हलचल which has already started in the fourth world, fourth state, as they call it, the
Correct.
journalistic environment, where people are talking of India taking the lead of the global south. Okay, जहाँ मतलब जो countries which are not able to stand on their own, and there are many such countries which would like to have an independent voice, which would like to have a voice which is like I said, there is a distrust, a mistrust, both on both sides. We also have our experiences with US, we have our experiences with China. With China, we signed four agreements, and they put all those agreements to a side and did Galwan to us or Doklam to us. So we have also been bitten by this backbiting or going back on your agreements. Therefore, there are many countries like this which are in this kind of a boat, and India could take the lead. Something like what we did when we were not even 1/20th of what we are today. I'm talking of way back in the 40s when Nehru was the prime minister. Something like that emerging, especially from the South American, the African Union, and the countries which are in the Asian and the even in the Pacific. You have a number of these island nations which are not at the level which the other countries are. I'm not talking of Taiwan, Japan, etc. I'm talking of the places where Prime Minister Modi also visited few months back. So we are talking of New Papua Guinea, which we are talking, even Fiji, such like countries. So therefore, we have the scope of taking the lead, but किस चीज पर लीड लेना है, वो भारत को बहुत ध्यान से देखना पड़ेगा। और मेरा जो मानना है कि इंडिया शुड नाउ टेक द लीड ऑन फर्स्ट द लीस्ट security related issues, where we are unlikely to start something in the security domain, because anything which we do in the security domain, whether where it involves the use of hard power, we will take a hit on our economy. And we cannot afford to take a hit on our economy, because our economy is basically just surviving on doing things every year correctly. Every year we have to balance our fiscal deficit, otherwise our fiscal deficit will shoot up. Like other countries, they're having inflation every month. We have to control our inflation so that public doesn't get annoyed internally. As such, you see the politicians, I mean internal political space which is there. Even if one little change which takes place in the internal dynamics, the entire country, there are people from outside who start using it as a toolkit, to go against the
Yeah,
government of
yeah.
India. So therefore, I think we are going on a very balanced way way ahead. So therefore, we should take up issues like climate change, trade. In fact, we have forgotten about WTO. If have you noticed? The people don't even talk about WTO because of the various factors which have now
All
emerged.
so that whole system that was set up
The
because of
global
these
com
sanctions, khatam.
the global commons has disappeared.
Correct. It's all everything to each his own sort of a thing. Yeah.
Yes, I mean it's my मर्जी, मेरी मर्जी है, मैं जो करना चाहूँ करूँ,
जो
नहीं
करना
करना चाहूँ
करूंगा.
नहीं। I will get people to buy my stuff. I'm good with it. So therefore, I think the global commons is one area where we can start taking up this process of global South leadership. This is the first and the foremost step which India needs to take, because here we are not going to unnecessarily hurt anyone's big egos. In fact, the Russians, Chinese, and the Americans, everyone will have to come on board.
Yeah, yeah.
Everyone will have to come on board, because it is affecting everyone. Look at the heat which is taking place in India, and look at the variation in temperatures which are taking place in various parts of the world. Look at China itself. Its rivers have dried out. It controls the world's water tower, Tibet, but yet it is running short of water.
Water.
I mean, people are focusing on entirely different, and they continue to go on building dams.
The Chinese
What
are
what are
somewhere.
the so if you take up these issues, I think Chinese will be isolated in international arena.
Yeah,
And that is
yeah,
what we should also start using our information narratives यार. अगर वो थ्री वॉरफेयर स्ट्रेटजी कर रहे हैं तो हमारे पास भी ये स्ट्रेटजी होनी चाहिए नैरेटिव बिल्डिंग की, जो कि सारी दुनिया सपोर्ट करेगी, और लड़ाई का जिसमें कहीं दूर दूर तक नामो निशान नहीं होगा। लेकिन साथ में मैं ये भी कहूंगा कि अगर लड़ाई हो गई तो हमारे पास ये काबिलियत है कि हम चाइना को, अगर रिजल्ट कुछ भी हो, हार हो या जीत हो, चाइना की भी वो हालत होगी कि वो दोबारा उठ के खड़ा होने में उसको सदियों लग जाएंगी। जबकि हमारे पास ऐसे दोस्त रहेंगे जो कि हमको जल्दी से ऊपर उठा सकते हैं। तो
absolutely correct, sir.
हमारे हमारे को ऐसी सिचुएशन बनानी है, यू हैव फ्रेंड्स हु कैन हेल्प यू, बट यू हैव द कैपेबिलिटी ऑन योर ओन टू टेक ऑन चाइना।
Absolutely,
बिल्कुल।
absolutely.
This is
Very wise
this
words, sir.
this is the mantra which we should have.
Yeah, very
The
wise words, sir.
The Chinese, Japanese, the Italians, you name all Russians, you name all these people, they have risen by aids. They were aided powers.
Yes,
Whereas what about India? India had to struggle right from word go. 47 से लेकर के आज तक हम अपने आप ही लड़ रहे हैं। 1% 2% हमारी ग्रोथ होती थी, उससे निकल के बाहर आए हैं, अपने दम पर आए हैं। और ये हम खुल के बोल सकते हैं दुनिया को कि जो भारत ने किया है अपने दम पर किया है, और अपने दम पे करेंगे, और अपने दम पर अपने जैसे लोगों को साथ लेके जाएंगे, ताकि जब जरूरत पड़े तो ये सब हमारे साथ रहें। बड़ा छोटा पावर की बात नहीं है, हिम्मत मर्दा, जिसमें हिम्मत है वो जीतेगा। और आई थिंक दैट इज व्हाट वी नीड टू शो टू द वर्ल्ड, एंड दैट इज द मंत्रा विच वी शुड हैव। wherever we go, we should go with a positive step, front foot forward, keeping the caution at our back so that nobody stabs us in the back.
absolutely. Very wise words, sir. Last 30-second question, sir. See,
Yeah, okay.
the biggest thing would be about safety of the borders. Campaign seasons are here. April,
Yeah,
May, June, July till September at least we've got campaign seasons in the
yeah,
east and somewhat in the north also. At
yeah,
least
that's
July,
right.
August में तो north में कर ही सकते हो आप कुछ ना कुछ. Do you
Yes.
expect anything, sir? Because every time there's been some sort of a US India development, and this is starting
I
2008, we've seen the graph going up.
I've always seen by my personal experience that whenever there is something happening between India and Pakistan, whether it is a visit, whether it is a track to dialogue, whether it is some kind of a return to normalcy taking place between India and Pakistan due to various political or diplomatic movements, something big has happened in India. Always. Even very recently, Bilawal Bhutto came and you found all those things happening in Rajouri, etc. So there has been a confirmed pattern to this. Same is the case with India and China as well. We should not forget Doklam. We should not forget Doklam. Doklam happened just before a huge delegation of the Chinese came. It was a Western
Big
Theater
challenge.
Command delegation. Western Theater Command delegation, which nobody, it didn't come in the news, but they visited almost our army headquarters. They visited us. They visited the command headquarters where I was the chief of staff. And hello, a month later, we have Doklam happening. And yours truly and our army commander, we got involved into totally. So therefore, very much. And Indo-US ties, Indo-US visit, especially on the invitation of the president of
Yeah,
president of America, with things like intimate dinner, addressing the parliament, etc. Sure, you may see something happening, you may see something, some kind of a movement happening on the ground, some kind of incident happening on the ground. And I'm sure the Indian forces are keeping their guard up on this particular issue. There's no doubt on that count. Both the flanks, whether it is the north or the east, would be prepared. And why till August? These guys have been doing things even later, because if you go towards the east, towards Arunachal, etc., the area is not that. prohibitive for you to not take any actions, so there are places where you can take these stupid actions which which the Chinese are quite used to taking. But I don't see a kind of a major action, but I definitely would see possibly some kind of an action around the
Yangtze
uh,
tapes.
not even Yangtze, I would say higher than Yangtze. Yangtze is actually very much a routine. We have seen these kind of movements taking place on
Yangtze, though, I think we released it because we wanted to squeeze a little bit at that time. So
that's fine. But I think it will be more to do with you see, we have to be careful of the development which is taking place opposite the Sikkim area in the Bhutan sector. There
yeah,
the Chinese have been and also northern Bhutan, where they
they
can
planned.
interfere
Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Finalize the
they can
boundary there.
wherever we have over boundaries with the other nations. I think those are the areas which we have to be careful of.
Ji,
That is
ji.
one. And in the east it is you're sure, I mean, you're all aware, Karakoram highway is something which they are very sensitive to it. They have been talking about a buffer zone, and look at their audacity. They every time give us a condition 15 kilometers of buffer zone, 10 kilometers of buffer zone. I haven't seen any buffer zone of this kind here, right? As such, Aksai Chin is entirely art, then you're talking of buffer zone in that particular area.
Exciting. Let's make the
So
buffer
there,
zone, huh? No problem.
yeah, we can make, okay, go beyond the exciting boundary. We'll make that as a buffer zone. Fine till it is decided by both the sides, which who takes exciting, do it that way. We need to be I think, forceful in our
Yeah.
in our negotiations. Possibly that heft will come after this visit.
That's I ये आपने सर बहुत. This is a big thing. See, this is what I am looking at, sir. Is this to build up the diplomatic heft? कि भाई ठीक है.
Yes,
Now we've got this, we've got this, we've got this. Now's the time
definitely,
to थोड़ा
definitely,
sharpen the
definitely,
knife and show it.
definitely. It is now
Because
time to show your
you've been seeing the Indian
correct.
response to Chinese status quo requests. Kinini,
Yeah,
there's normalization at the border. India said no. There's
every
no
meeting,
normalization at the border.
every meeting they have been saying, where is the hurry?
Hmm.
Everything is normal, things are stable, let's move ahead in other directions, let's move ahead in other domains.
And Minister Jaishankar gave a very strong reply this time. Ki, bhai, if you think it's normal, then ठीक है, fair enough.
ठीक है, हमारे लिए
We
नॉर्मल नहीं
also
है।
not deal. Hmm.
नहीं, हमारे लिए नॉर्मल नहीं है। हमारे लिए कंडीशंस हैं, जब वो कंडीशंस मीट करेंगे देन वी विल टॉक टू यू,
Then we'll see.
और
Yeah.
we will agree to a particular point of view. You have not honored your agreements. Why should we be in a hurry to come up with a new agreement? As such, you see again, after the Kailash ranges thing, we have again been backstabbed. It was done with a promise that similar thing will be done elsewhere, and there'll be a gradual pull out back to the
That's what
status
the
quo,
Chinese had said.
of 2013. Again, they have district. Now they're talking of buffer zone. What is this nonsense? They're making some. So they have started building these villages along their LAC, on the ground that it is our area. We are at liberty to build these bridges. Oh, okay, do it. Let the indigenous people do it, na. Let the Tibetans do it.
No, no,
Why
no.
you
वो
want somebody else from the outside?
तो गड़बड़ हो जाएगी सर. टिबेटन करेंगे तो फिर टिबेटन वन फाइन डे वो तो झंडा चेंज हो जाएगा वहां पर.
So that is what I'm trying to say, is that these people are smart, and we need to be careful of their orchestration. We we have to clearly say that China is no more entity which is in the domain of competition. Leave aside cooperation.
Cooperation.
It's beyond competition. It's in the domain of conflict.
So
And
let's
if it
get
is
into some.
moving to and if it is moving toward the Cold War kind of a situation, so be it.
So be it.
We are happy with that.
We're not worried about that. I don't think so. We should be worried about that as well.
Yeah.
Let's get into some questions, sir. It is actually, I must compliment you before we do so. We've covered a very comprehensive this thing. So thank you so much for doing that. The
Thank
Russia
you.
Pakistan angle is important. I don't think the Russians will do anything, but it is important for us to understand the value of the threat that we have standing
we
right
should
there always.
we should be careful of their sensitivities.
Yeah,
That's
yeah, yeah,
that's my
absolutely,
that's my
absolutely,
point.
absolutely. So, guys, before I do, like the video, we've got more than 200 people watching. Please like, all of you. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel if you've not. Spread the word with other people so that they can also join the family. You can contribute to the Dev Talks efforts. The QR code is up there. You can become a member. There's a link which is there. Start on the chat, or you can send us a super sticker or a super chat. Let's get into it, sir. First, very interesting question. Shritik asks, Chinese are perceived to be clever and strategic thinkers. Perceived is the bottom line. Uh, so why don't they realize that hostility will only push India further towards Western partners, which is contrary to their interests?
You see, this is a question which most rational people will say so. But China is in a hurry. It has laid down for itself some self-assigned landmarks that by 2037 I'll be a great power, right? So if it has to show that great power thing, it has to remove the regional competition out of its way. Which is the regional competition out of its way? It's India. And therefore, it is in the interest of the Chinese to keep India on the boil, keep India's economy come down. And India's interest is to keep its economy going. Because once the economy keeps going, and I always say that the debate between the butter and the
Guns
bank,
and butter.
guns and butter, it is the butter which has to come first, and then the guns will come. There is no doubt on that. So therefore, this India's quest for being economically strong enough is driving us through a path which we are seeing in front of us. And the Chinese quest, that now that they have the butter with them, and also the bang with them, they want the regional competition out and then focus on to their global
But you're also
competition, which is,
right, sir. They're in a hurry because they know that the butter is kind of melting.
yes,
तो जितनी
that is
जल्दी
also,
कर सकते हो कर लो.
see, they've realized that their economy is not going to hold out the way it was holding out.
Correct.
That's the bigger, and every projection now are saying this year's estimate has been beyond the projections of the World Bank. We had not told that we are going to grow this much. It's the World Bank which told that we are going to grow at 6.8 or something, and we have grown at 7.3. And they are forced to revise their
Estimates.
projections.
Yes, sir.
So therefore, it is outwardly people are telling that India is growing, and the Chinese are not stupid enough. They know that Indians are on a path which is totally. Where has the market gone from China? It has gone to Vietnam. It has gone to the other countries close by. Indonesia is one of the biggest beneficiaries, but overflow will definitely come to India.
No, a lot
Yeah,
of
we
big
have.
chunks. Sir. China has lost Apple,
Yeah,
Foxconn. Hmm.
absolutely. So while India is not a still not a very favored destination because of our red tapeism, which is a common perception out here, but we are doing a lot of changes in our ease of doing business to ensure that the people are coming in the big numbers. The defense corridor, the land is no more a problem now. I can tell you in UP, the government of UP is giving land at 1 rupee. Take the land, establish the development manufacturing here. That's the level of promise which is being offered in India. You can't beat that. Nowhere in the world you will get this kind of a concession.
Yeah.
आओ तो सही, आओ तो सही, बनाओ तो सही, रास्ता हम दिखाएंगे आपको. कल ही हमारा एक सेमिनार इस पे खत्म हुआ है, और इसमें ये सारी चीजें सब उभर के सामने आई हैं. These things have come in front. I think India is going beyond the halfway mark to invite. Of course, there are still a lot of problems. I don't deny that,
Problems are there.
but
Hmm.
definitely things are much better than what they were, say, 4 5 years back or 6 years back.
So I'll take up two separate questions, but they kind of hint on the same thing.
Okay.
You have given a little bit of a hint in the beginning, but let's dig into it. USA spends billions on R&D. How much does India spend? This is the first one. And the second one says, in Indus X initiative, will government provide the funding or would the private capital be involved? Now,
Yeah, this is a question which got discussed. We had I'm also part of I'm the vice chairman of Strive Dialogue, a Strive think tank in India. So we had a huge seminar yesterday in conjunction with the Economic Times, and it was a big hit. In fact, the Defense Minister of India was the chief guest of the seminar, and he had addressed everyone in this, and they had addressed this concern of yours. The R&D of India and America cannot be compared. The I mean, look at their budget, which is
Yeah.
around in trillions it goes, and look at their GDP is around 21 trillion. We have a GDP of 3 trillion. Our overall budget is very limited, and that is why we are going in for these agreements. Where we are actually looking at foreign venture capital. That's the thing which we are looking at. But notwithstanding that, 25% of the R&D budget is going to the private sector. That is something which has been announced last year in the last budget, and it is going to be increased only. 75% of our defense requirements are now to be taken from indigenous markets. That gives the visibility of demand to our defense verticals of various companies, whether it is Adani, Reliance, or Kalyani Forge, or Z Technologies. These are the various Alpha Defense, etc. Various defense manufacturing firms which are looking at this. MKUs today. MKU is a company on defense products based in Kanpur. It is now exporting to 100 countries, including America. But R&D is a serious business. The government of India is saying that it has allocated R&D for MSME also. It is allocating R&D to universities, funds to universities, which are at liberty to get these startups associated with them and carry out their research and development work. So therefore, a lot of action is taking place by India, but by no means they are comparable to the US. We are still making baby steps in this, but suffice it to say, private sector is getting 25% of the R&D budget of India,
See,
and this is likely to increase only.
if I may say in layman's terms, I look at it in a very, very simple way. A lot of times we have, we've got this innate sense of one, underestimation of our own capabilities, right? Two, an innate sense, if I may say, put it very crudely, a very cribby sense of understanding of things. We always see, यार ये नहीं है, वो नहीं है, कैसे होगा, ये कुछ नहीं कर सके, आज तक नहीं हुआ, क्यों नहीं? See, there is, if you look at every country in the world, and as sir said, I think very rightly brought out, all the larger countries that have grown, China and Germany and Japan and everybody, has been aided economies.
Yeah,
They've been given stuff. What we have achieved for us today till today has been on our own standing.
खुद के दम पर है.
So that is something I think very, very important also. So even if the government cannot spend that much, that is, I think, one of the biggest reasons that you've brought out, that private sector has been brought in, because the capacity to spend and the capacity to sustain is a bit higher.
Absolutely. And let me tell you, the private sector is in need of money.
Yeah,
Yesterday, based on what interaction I had in the seminar, I realized that, see, it's a commercial model. They need two
absolutely.
things. They need two things for any investment. First, they must have a demand visibility. Okay, I mean, I'm not going to invest in R&D. At the end of the day, my equipment is going to lie waste.
Hmm.
The second thing which everybody is afraid of in R&D is, after umpteen number of failures, you come to a successful development. So the money which gets spent on R&D is like a graph which initially rises very high, but
Yeah,
when it comes to the manufacturing level, it starts reducing, because then the
correct.
economy of scales start working. The government is looking at a model where public private sector development is being encouraged, which means that a PSU can very well incorporate a private sector and carry out a development where there is sharing of load as far as the R&D expenditure is concerned. Similarly, R&D is also being looked at from the joint ventures, like what we are
Hmm.
looking at with the current agreement, which is going to happen with India and US. So there are multiple routes being followed for this, and your point is very, very genuine.
Yeah,
Our R&D is definitely much less. You can't compare. There's no use comparing it with with America. Their budgets are
absolutely.
too high. Yes, the way we should go about development is something which we need to now take into account. There was a youngster. I'm surprised. I mean, this everybody should listen to. Tushar was his name. A boy of 25, 26 years age. This guy is into. He's a startup, head of a startup in AI, etc.
Hmm.
He says that I require money, but I also require the right kind of inputs. I can't develop a system sitting in my AC office. So if I have to develop a system for security of station A, I must, whether if it is in Leh, Ladakh, or whichever place, or on the borders of Myanmar, I have to go there, spend days and months together to understand their security requirement, understand the requirement of the equipment which they want, and then come up with a solution. And he says he's been doing it and he's been greatly successful. In fact, he is considered as one of the best startups in the country today. A youngster. This kind of realization is not coming into the people. People are thinking हम बैठे रहेंगे यहीं से डेवलप करेंगे. नहीं, आपको पता ही नहीं उसको चाहिए क्या. And there is some fault of the users also. Like we say that, see, India is a huge country. We have Himalayas, which is minus 20, minus 30 degrees, and then we have the deserts, which is plus 20, plus 50, plus 40 degrees centigrade. We want an equipment which is doable in all the terrain. How can it happen here?
Yeah, that
So
is
now these
that is
kind
a
of
big
efforts.
issue in terms of our requirements, sir. Not
And
very
these
many
things,
countries in the world have that kind of diversity in
absolutely,
terms of.
our academia. In fact, we are looking at a thing where there'll be scientist soldiers, which means, or soldier scientist. I am a scientist, but I am also a soldier. I do a 4 year tenure in the army, go to a scientific establishment, come back again to the army, plow back whatever I have learned, take the problems from wherever I was, do some development on that, and come back. This is a new idea which the Indian Defense Forces are now trying to tow with. It will be something fantastic. एंड इंडिया आता है, ओरिजिनल आइडिया लेके आएगा, इंडिया भी आएगा. इंडिया के पास भी अब वो सोचने की पावर आ गई है कि हम किस तरह से
Mhm.
अपने आप को आगे बढ़ाएं. वेरी गुड क्वेश्चन, एंड आई थिंक वी आर ऑन द राइट लाइंस as far as the government is concerned. Yeah.
So West was sleeping when China put pressure in South China Sea. Only when India pushed back China in Galwan does the West want to collaborate with India. Is the West seriously with India or wants to throw India in to defend Taiwan?
You see, it's a mutual benefit. Nobody looks at you till you prove yourself. हीरो पहले बना या आपने उसको हीरो बनाया? आप बताइए, इसका आंसर दीजिए. कोई फिल्म में वो अपने आप पहले हीरो बनता है या आप उसको हीरो बनाते हैं? जब वो कुछ प्रॉमिस दिखाता है, तब लोग उसके पीछे जाते हैं. एंड आई थिंक दिस इज अ नेचुरल लॉ ऑफ ह्यूमन बिहेवियर, that and country is also a human behavior. So when you show, see, you may be taking an action quietly and sitting quiet over it, but when you display that action in full public view, then people see it, people realize what you are doing, and then people have that gumption to come up and take up issues with you. Yes, in doing so, I agree with your second point that we should not become a cannon fodder of the powers that be and become a proxy of someone. I am dead against India becoming a proxy. If we have to fight a war, we will fight a war for our needs, our requirements. Isn't it beneficial if the Chinese are engaged on the Taiwan front for India?
Two front
Isn't
wars,
it
sir.
isn't it beneficial if Vietnam keeps fingering China?
China. Hmm.
Isn't it beneficial if the Japanese are on the ball against the Chinese in the East China Sea. Let's also work around people. If people are trying to work around us and trying to use us for defending Taiwan, I think we also have some diplomatic heft. And why did Prime Minister Modi go to New Papua Guinea when the G7 meet was taking place in Japan? See, these
So,
things are timed, and certain things are for optics, but certain things are smart signaling of messages. It did rattle people when he landed on the landed in that area, and then he landed in Australia. It is a different matter that बाद में क्या हुआ, Australia ने क्या किया. Some people will always throw this narrative. Oh, moment Modi left, the Australians have banned the Indian students from whatever they were restricting some quota, etc. These kind of toolkits will keep coming. Like yesterday, Guru was discussing with Adi that you have to take a fly beater and just tap it on front of that very toolkit. Then toolkit should be put to
Naisa,
rest.
see, I also, we have become a little too oversensitive. I'm sorry, I'll just interject. We become a little too oversensitive. You
Yeah,
look at what happened in Japan when the G7 was happening. They were
yeah,
calling G7 members murderers,
yeah,
right? In Japan, who's part of the G7.
yeah.
ठीक है, वहां पर प्रोटेस्ट हो रहे हैं. Sir, protest and all this hangama is a part of the game to get attention. Nothing else,
That's right. That's right. No, but
right? This is just
I'm
you
just saying for
using
the
the world media who's collected in a place and
yeah.
creating a tamasha so that that media just turns this camera around. Oh, देखो वहां पर तमाशा हो रहा है और कुछ नहीं है.
उनको भी थोड़ा सा अपना रोटी रोटी कमानी होती है. That is
हाँ, that's it. And I'm quite
that is one
positive
way.
when
Yeah, that is one way
yeah,
to look at it. But I'm also saying that we are also now up and about here.
yeah, yeah.
आपको पता है हर पॉलिटिकल पार्टी के पास आजकल वो नैरेटिव बिल्डर्स आ गए हैं. तो भारत के पास क्यों नहीं होंगे? हमारे पास भी होंगे, करेंगे.
Mm-hmm.
व्हाट हैपेंड इन कनाडा, आई मीन, देखो आप, कुछ ना कुछ होगा उधर भी. अमेरिका में कुछ हुआ, कुछ ना कुछ होगा उधर भी. अभी जाएंगे मोदी साहब तो उधर भी कुछ ना कुछ होगा, कुछ रोड शो होगा उधर.
हाँ हाँ पक्का होगा
रोड
सर.
शो अब
It's
होने
been
दो
planned
उसको.
in New York City and Washington.
अभी देखो,
Already बता रहा हूँ.
100% अलाइनमेंट तो कभी हो नहीं सकती ना.
ना.
Governments are formed with 40% votes in favor.
Yeah.
The country still has 60% people.
Let's go. So, your views on India buying MQ9 Reaper drone during PM Modi's visit? Will it be ineffective in mountain terrain LSE, and will India use it to target terrorists in Pakistan like US does?
Yeah,
But you've been
look,
watching too much of
these are
Pakistan TV यार. वो तो बेचारे बोल रहे हैं कि सारे
well,
30 के 30 हमारे सिर पे डांस करें.
look, Predators are very, very smart equipment. It's a very
Yeah.
good, in fact, the one of the best in the world today. We are getting about 30 of them as per the agreement. My sense is that we should go in for it with a TOT. Uh, then only I think it will be favorable to us. That is the second issue. My thing is also that along with the TOT, we must get the rights to export. Unless we do that, we cannot sustain the assembly lines which we create for a technology transfer. Otherwise, afterwards, what do we do? We can't depend only on the domestic market for such high value targets. Why do you think the Americans are wooing us? They want to re-jump start their defense industry, which is now lying idle, or which has to produce weapons for Ukraine without money. So all that aid which is being offered to Ukraine is actually going to these defense industry guys who are producing the weapons and equipment. Government has to spend and give money to them. So the US wants the money also coming back. India is one of the likely markets. So possibly India is being viewed from that point of view. Let's take advantage of that. Let's take all these concessions which we are talking about, and then go in for predators. As far as your targeting of the terrorists and in Pakistan or doing something in China is concerned, look, the situation will decide that. You can't be pre declaring that they'll be used for this or that. If need be, India will use it. If need not, if the need is not, then it will not use it. It will use it during hot war, or it may use it against any other country. Why only Pakistan? So it all depends on the situation. But the will would be there with India. That much I can tell you. The will to use would be there.
So, just take last two, sir. Siva says US wants India for the market, manufacturing, and human resources, talent pool, diaspora, etc. Their education is in crisis, and they need a collaborative R&D.
I agree. I agree with you. Even the current R&D which is there in the Americas is actually dependent on a lot of Indians who are working there. So there definitely this is something which is it'll be cheaper also. Rather than calling a brain from India and giving him the salaries etc. which are prevalent in the US, it is much more costlier. So if it is a
Exactly what
collaborative,
happened with the call center, sir.
absolutely, it's a much it's a agreement pitched at a different level for a different domain with much more classification and much more security factors built into it. I think I agree with you. This is surely, and why not? What is our strength? We must capitalize on our strength. That's the way to go ahead. Yeah, strengths are always capitalized by opportunities, and if there is an opportunity thrown up, grab it.
With both hands.
Yes.
And the last one, sir.
Mhm.
China's hand is visible in the violence in Manipur. I said that right from the first day. People laughed. If you go to the comments when I put that video out, people laughed at me and said, "You blame everything to China." Now it is coming out that China's hand is there. So, anyways, he asks, "How can India tackle China aggressively?"
Definitely. How can India tackle China aggressively is something which does not mean that we tackle him by use of force only. See,
Yes,
you use force where there is a target. Okay, we used force in Balakot, we got a target and we used it. We used force in Uri, we had a target, we used it. We used force in Myanmar, we had a target of terrorists who were camping there and who had to be uh, shown a kind of a strategic action that India can take if you guys try to misbehave with us, right? Now with China, do we have such a target as of now, except for the black market which is there in Yunnan,
truly.
right? So therefore, with the Chinese, we have to do what they are doing to us,
Yeah.
and it will be. They would also say that there is some hand. You know what was Xi Jinping doing few days back? He was in Mongolia. Few days back, the Global Times, in fact, today has thrown out pictures of Xinjiang showing people dancing, etc. Why? To prove a point that the Western media is going against them with a narrative that the Chinese or the Han Chinese are trying to suppress, trying to dominate, and trying to be, uh, I would say, use brutality against the local Uyghurs. So therefore, these kind of narratives are coming from the other side also. We have a way of doing things. I think it will be done quietly without announcing anything. Like I said, please go back to the External Affairs Minister's statement. Things when done will be done in a manner that they get the signal, they get the message. There is a government in Myanmar which has been propped up by the Chinese. I think the people will be working behind scenes to do something there.
Absolutely. That's one thing that I must put across, and I'll say it in a very layman's language again, sir. We're not Pakistan that we overspeak. Problem with the Pakistanis है वो करते हैं बट बोलते ज्यादा हैं और फंस जाते हैं उसके बाद.
And
So
correct. and
we
and
should do
another
whatever
thing,
we should do quietly.
yeah, another thing which I would like to tell you, what's the priority as of now for India as of now? The priority is to get the situation under control. That's priority number one. Once you have your own house in order, I mean, yesterday itself some BJP MLAs houses have been burnt by the local population in north in Imphal. So till the time your internal situation, there is a uh, huge campaign going on on your own national
Social
media.
media. Hmm.
Yeah, national media, yeah, X News. There is some lady, Miss Gladdy or somebody who's talking all kind of.
Yeah, yeah.
So therefore, we have to first get our own internal dynamics sorted out, internal peace to return, and then the other departments would be taking action as deemed fit. Don't be
Indeed.
always under the impression that we are quietly doing, we are quietly letting things away. No, if nothing
Well,
happens along, if nothing happens along our LAC in the next 3 months, be assured something has been done.
नहीं, आप ये भी देख लो ना सर, इतने सारे खालिस्तानी फुदकते थे,
बिल्कुल
एक एक करके
सब
बेचारे
Sub, so
अपनी जैसे।
so these things will be done, will be taken care of. I think certain things we should not always look for military solutions.
या एब्सोल्युटली
Military solutions against military targets very much doable. Yeah.
सर, as usual, fantastic eye opener of a discussion. You
Thank
brought
you.
about different aspects, which is always, I think, your trademark. Thank you so much for bringing that out.
Thanks.
Uh,
Yeah. Thanks.
Let me tell the audience something that there is a lot of work that sir does to put these things together. As a matter of fact, we had two long discussions to bring this show up.
Yeah.
So it's not that we just sit together and sir starts and काफी sir की तरफ से ideas sir takes थोड़ा सा मेरे दिमाग में क्या है, उसके बाद he'll
बिल्कुल.
build it up and do a lot of things and then build up the discussion. Thank you
Yeah.
so much for that, sir. It's always a pleasure and
Thanks,
a
Adi.
honor
Thanks,
to
Adi.
have you on the show.
Thanks, Adi.
And till next time, sir. Jai
Okay.
Hind.
Thanks. Thanks, Lord. Thanks, Lord. Just don't block. I would like to tell your audience that tomorrow I'm going to have a discussion on the Stripe dialogues on something which is going to be even more interesting, and that is called. There are two tools of strategic management which are called Mackinder and Mahan's theory. Most of the foreign policies are dictated by these two theorists who lived way back in the 19th century. It is their ideas which are now playing out in the last 50 to 60 years, what you are seeing around here. So we'll be discussing those two theories with two domain experts. They have been teachers of these theories for the last, I mean, 3 4 years in a row. They have taught this theory. So if you people are keen, you can join tomorrow. It will be somewhere around 4:30. Between 4 and 4:30, I'll put out the notification. But it will be interesting for people who are interested in knowing the theory behind of what we discussed today. Today you discuss the deliverables. There you will discuss the theory. I mean, how does the theory affect the way people are behaving? A lot of compulsions are there for nations. Geography dictates a lot of things. Thanks.
Sir. Right, sir.